Thank you for having us here.
Now, my instinct is to call you Dr. Mensch, but I'm told to call you Arthur, so.
You can call me Arthur,
Oh.
yes. I did a PhD but a long time ago and kind of forgot everything about it. So.
Well, it's fantastic to be here in Tallinn to dig into this, and as our moderator just told us, this is a panel on reimagining an AI and technology-powered security framework. I like to start with definitions because that's pretty wide. So, as I understand it, an AI security and tech-powered framework is a structural set of guidelines, policies, and best practices to safeguard this digital assets, AI systems, and data against modern threats by leveraging tech like AI and automation. So this means everything like continuous AI monitoring, scanning for anomalies, flagging threats in real time, scanning for unauthorized access, et cetera. So we're going to start with that individual definition and then build out to some of the practical solutions that your company has come up with. And then I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you for some real-time solutions as if I was the customer and you were riffing to sell the system to me. But let's start with the fact that Europe is under attack. As has been mentioned by a previous speaker, something like 600 million cyber attacks a day, daily sophisticated disinformation campaigns primarily attributed to Russia, DDoS attacks, hacktivist groups exploiting AI-driven tools to amplify these attacks on telecom providers and government sites. So how is Mistral AI currently fighting this? Can you tell us about one of the campaigns that you've designed?
So we work with defense companies on those topics. I'd say the cyber infrastructure is effectively under threat by more and more sophisticated attacks that are enabled actually by AI systems. So we need to work in a world where, because our adversaries actually know how to use AI, whether on the digital space or on the physical space, it is absolutely necessary that European states also owns the technology in a way that allows them to defend themselves with full sovereignty. And so if you look at the cyberspace, what AI allows to do is to detect flows and to actually make more sophisticated attacks that are human-centric, that may that you can identify flows in coding in code bases much more easily. So on one side, on the attack side, you can identify what to exploit, but on the defense side, if you use our coding models, for instance, you can detect the anomalies beforehand. So if you look at a system, if you deploy our technology to monitor certain networks, you can have heuristics that identify problems, identify attacks. So that's really on the cyber side. The one part where we've played an active role is when it comes to monitoring social media and the information campaign. So we work with intelligence agencies on those domains of detecting.
Can you say which ones, or
we
no?
can't really say which one because those are intelligence agencies. But what generative AI allows to do is to understand human behavior at scale. So you can see, you can look at everything that is happening on social media. You can look at everything that is happening on in certain messaging and detect where you should intervene and where there seems to be a coordinated attack.
So, like, you can detect bot farm behavior that is trying to push a specific narrative. Say, in the U.S., it would be that the 2020 election was false. That was
yes. You
illegal.
can do that, and it's basically the only way in which you can do that, because the information campaign are generated by AI systems today. Those are widely available, and some of the best tools are actually made by some of our adversaries. So to detect such sophisticated attacks, you need to be able to monitor at scale human-produced content. And the only way in which you do that is to look at what's happening on the web, on multiple channels, and have some intelligence and reasoning models that look at that and transform that into signal and help decision making. So if you see something like this, well, we should make it known, and then we should prepare a counter campaign that is telling that this is a de-information campaign.
What are the barriers to doing that when, I mean, X doesn't want you in their system, neither does WeChat or Weibo, when you're just looking at it from the outside?
Well, you can look at, the good thing with artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, is that they can actually browse, you can browse the web with them. So as long as a certain provider provides an interface to their technology, which are, so all providers actually have to do that, you can actually start monitoring what's happening there. So if you don't trust moderation capabilities of certain actors that are, in particular, that are not European actors and that have certain rules that do not comply with our rules and with our set of values, then you can actually do it externally and detect it. Well, you have to build that resilience. You don't want to depend on the moderation capabilities of platform, because oftentimes they are not aligned with what we want, with our vision of freedom of speech.
So as a reporter and currently an analyst at CNN cable channel, I frequently get called fake news. So if I took your information and said, look, this means that these are if I would report, Mistral AI reports that these bots, this message is being pushed by a bad actor and it's untrue. What would the level of trust be, for instance, in France or in Europe, in your company's say-so? Like your company comes up with this judgment. I understand that you're doing this for intel agencies. They're your customer, they believe you. Would the wider public believe when you find something, an illegitimate message, by what you're looking for?
I mean, it is the general problem of what sources do you trust is not really an AI problem. We are a trusted partner to enterprises because we've invested in being as transparent as possible on our technology, so our models are open source in particular. The one thing we did on our consumer product, which is called Le Chat, is that we've partnered with press agencies that are known to be as neutral as possible and that have the widest coverage of what's happening on the ground in the world. So we've partnered with AFP, we've partnered with the IP, so that when asked a question, when Le Chat gets asked a question, and it gives it finds some references either it finds some press wires that can document the answer. So in a way, what matters is not really the intelligence, it's what you feed the intelligence with. So you want to provide them with a context that is human produced and that is validated and that has some form of external validation. This is not really what we can provide. I think generally, the transparency on sources and the explainability of whatever an AI can produce is key in creating the trust that is needed. Because AI is going to be so much powerful at influencing people into certain ways, we need to promote such transparency. I think one of my biggest fears, I would say, is to see 2 or 3 US providers own the entire information space. And when you own the portal to information, if the only place in which you can get information is to ask a US provider chatbot for a question, then they have immense power on controlling thoughts. What that means is that the reason for that is that they know how, chatbots are very empathetic, so they become your friends. And so as such, they actually build a lot of influence on you. People build true friendship relationship with those systems.
So the chatbot wants to please you, and you want to be able to rely on them. So that creates this feedback loop.
The big problem is that we may end up in a setting where you have 2 or 3 information portals owned by US players that control how everybody gets access to information, that build some personalization states, so they know exactly how, like the behavior of a certain person, and then their business model is, of course, to deal with people that are paying for influence. So that's an ads business.
Yeah.
That's basically the only way in which the economic model of certain US company can work. So building an ad business, very high margin, to finance all of the infrastructure spent that we see. And so what that means is that these are going to become information portals that that companies will be able to pay and that will be able to influence their users in a way which is much stronger than the previous social media. And so if you think
Could you give me an example of something that you could see happening if, like, Google controls the space? What kind of a question would someone in the public be asking that they'd get what you might consider the wrong answer?
If you look at, if you remember Cambridge Analytica.
What's that?
Do you remember Cambridge Analytica?
Oh, yes, right, okay. Cambridge Analytica.
Yes, so that was 2016. Basically, what we will probably see, if we don't pay attention in the coming years, is massive influence campaigns distributed through chatbots, because there will be an ad business of influencing people toward voting certain things in a way that will be much harder to detect, because you can actually task a chatbot to be much more subtle in propagating certain ideas or certain ways of thinking. And so, to me, this is really something we need to be super cautious about. I don't think we talk about it enough. I think Europe will be under threat. We know it's under threat. Every country sees some massive influence campaign, and they will use AI systems as their next vector in the coming years for the upcoming elections. And the only answer to that is diversity of providers. So having European providers of such information portal is going to be critical, and that's the reason why, one of the reasons why we created Mistral. The other thing that is critical is to provide enough transparency on how you can pay for influence and what kind of personalization state do you build for users. So what do we know about our users is going to be super important. That's why at Mistral, Le Chat in particular, if you ask for it, it's very easy to find everything that the system knows about you and to actually edit that so that there is no unwanted influence on the conversations.
How do you teach AI, just philosophical question, how do you teach it to say, I don't know?
Well, that's a scientific question. The challenge here is that generative AI systems are meant to invent things by design. You ask them to generate text. And so, in a way, hallucinating is kind of a feature. It's something that you want them to do. If you give them two concepts and you ask them to think about these two concepts together, well, you want it to be creative. So the hard thing is to decipher when the conversations is about fact and will require to have a grounding in reality, or when the conversation becomes something which is more about creation and invention, in which case you want it to actually hallucinate. And so what we have been able to do is to kind of map out how people are actually using the technology and create behaviors that are different when the conversation is something that needs to be grounded in reality. In which case, when the model do not know the answer, it should say it doesn't know. And we on the other hand, we also have a set of conversations, in particular, in which we know that this is about creation. And in that case, you don't want the model to refuse engaging, because at the end, this is the user actually wants it to invent new things.
So to move back to what threats Europe faces and how AI can help defend against that. Another situation you mentioned, critical infrastructure. There was a lot of suspicion that the outage in Spain and Portugal was from some sort of a hacking attack. It turned out apparently not to be, but when I cover the war in Ukraine and talk about it on air, one of the frequent fears that comes up, I'm going to take you on a little journey before I get to the question. One of the frequent fears is Putin might use nuclear weapons. But that sort of puts aside what I think is a greater threat in many ways, and a more likely threat, that the US and Russia have mined each other's systems. Russia has also mined Europe's systems. And when I say mined, I mean they've left destructive packets of code inside electricity, water, hospitals, et cetera, to trigger, should there be this is a way of, fighting back. The way US intelligence has briefed it to reporters is that they anticipate Moscow using something like this if there's some sort of a nuclear weapons attack on Russia. That's one instance. So how do you either stop an attack in real time, or better yet, use AI to find that malicious code hidden in this machine?
So at Mistral, we build what we call coding agents. So those are, those are models that they generate some code. They can navigate complex IT systems and dig out information, test things. So you would ask them, let's say you go into a water plant or you go into an energy plant, and you deploy it on their network, and you ask the coding agent to run a bunch of tests, because you give them access to computer. And they would run a bunch of tests. They would identify whether there are some anomalies, and based on that, try and look at whether these anomalies correspond to potential dormant code or things that that are not expected. So, in a way, the coding agents we do, which are akin to software engineers. So they know how to navigate systems, they know how to execute code, they know how to write code, they know how to do the analysis of the outcome of running some commands. Well, those are probably the way in which you actually get to strengthen the IT of those infrastructures. And it's actually probably the only way in which you get to strengthen them at scale. Because again, it's all it's a cat and mouse problem. Coding agents, our adversaries know how to do. Russians know how to leverage coding agents to enter into flawed systems. And so, in order to counter attacks that are made by AI systems at scale, you need to have AI systems that are deployed in defense at scale. And so that's only. And I would say it's only looking at what could happen on the digital space. But where we spend a lot of time when we work with defense companies, the like of Helsing, is to work on the physical space. How do we embed our models and our sensor systems into drones that have enough autonomy so that they can act on the battlefield and counteract other drones that also have a lot of autonomy because they use artificial intelligence. So then in that setting, there is a race in deploying AI systems that provide enough autonomy and enough intelligence, because on the other side, you do have these systems that are growing. And what that means in turn is that Europe needs to own those systems, because Europe needs to own its own destiny when it comes to Ukraine in particular.
So before we move to drones and the physical battle space, just to tie it up on critical infrastructure, if you were contracted by the government of France to protect their water and their electricity, what would that look like?
So in France, in particular, we work with Veolia, which is the biggest water infrastructure provider.
So you're already doing this?
So, yeah, it's not the French state, but it's the infrastructure companies. So Veolia and EDF, which are the electricity provider and the water providers, biggest ones, are customers of ours. What we do with them is not really related to security, I should say. It's more related of smart grids and monitoring, and effectively better making sure that factories, water plant facilities are run more efficiently, so that we detect breakage of machines, and we make sure that the employees that are working in those factories are actually able to fix the machines earlier and make sure that things are back in order in a shorter time period. So in that sense, we're making things more efficient, and when we work with EDF, we work on smart grid aspects. So we make things more efficient, but of course, efficiency and more efficiency means resilience. What that means is that efficiency in a factory is oftentimes about fixing problems faster. And so building that form of resilience is also a way to make sure that if we are under attack, we can recover faster.
So for the policymakers in the room, a prescription to take away from your example is, since you're already doing business with this utility provider, while you're not specifically looking for cyber threats right now, you are inside and familiar with the system, so if they are attacked, it'll be a much shorter lead time to a sort of a defensive solution?
I mean, you want to think about the cybersecurity before you are under attack. And so those...
but that's not what you're doing for this particular...
This is not how we entered, this is not how we started to work with them.
Okay.
And I think this, if you look at what's in the CEO's mind, I don't think that cybersecurity is the biggest problem at their moment, but it should. But again, what we do, because we bring an horizontal platform, what we do is we connect to the factory data, we connect to the different proprietary sources of signal. We do it in a way which is sovereign, so that our customers can actually deploy the system and own the system even if we disappear. And once the thing is connected, and once we start to bring efficiency gains in factories, efficiency gains in acting on the grid, well, the step to increase the cybersecurity and increase the defense capabilities and the resilience capabilities when an attack will come, actually are better. So that's a natural path that we will be following. On the cybersecurity side, we really work with states today, but then we do also work with multiple utilities company. And to answer your question, I think we will probably soon get to work on cybersecurity aspects.
So to move then to the lessons being learned on the Ukrainian battlefield, the behavior of drones right now is they're first-person view drones, so these are humans driving them. On the Ukrainian side, the big innovation that the Russians came up with are the fiber optic cables, because the fiber optic cables driving the enemy drones can't be hacked, makes it hard to spot. And one of the things that they'll do is a drone on a fiber optic cable will dwell for hours at a time, a kilometer up, watch the very frozen battlefield and watch for Ukrainian troop movements, and then send a suicide drone. How would you design a system to detect that behavior and find those dwell drones and to stop the attacks?
So the first thing you want to do in that setting, and we are a technology provider, so to design such systems, we partner with defense companies that have better vertical knowledge of what are the sensors that we could deploy, what are the drones that we could deploy to actually get better information. And then our job is to connect those informations, videos, images, sounds, monitoring of conversations that you can capture. And then based on all of these streams of information, facilitate decision making. So that's what we know how to do.
Multi-source intelligence streams, your GeoInt, SIGINT, all of the ints to get the picture of the battlefield.
Absolutely. That's what generative AI allows you to do. Process multiple streams of information coming from multiple modalities. So again, that can come from satellites, that can come from other drones that would be higher than the 1 kilometer Russian drone. And based on that, do the identification of the Russian drone, for instance, and then do a recommendation to the troops on the ground for eliminating that drone. So the one thing that actually is hard to do is to detect the signal in the noise, because you will have a lot of data coming in, and you want to detect a very tiny point on the satellite image or a tiny point on a drone image, and based on that you need to have a model that reasons about it and that say, look, this is an anomaly, there shouldn't be a point on that image. What should I do? It probably means it's a drone. If it's a drone, I need to call those troops because I know those troops can actually eliminate that threat. So at the end, you need an intelligence break. You need a model that sees different images, that detect a signal which is an anomaly, that does a reasoning that relate that signal to an action it should be taking based on all of the tools that has been connected to the platform. So it needs to be making a call to a certain commander that will then eliminate that drone. So what AI allows to do, and those are things that we're working on with partners, is to optimize the command and control systems. See what's happening, and then decide with a shorter period of time. And you want the decision loop to be faster than the decision loop that is in the other side. And so the speed of deployment, the fact that it's resilient to network problems, etc., is extremely critical in such settings. And so deploying on the edge, in particular, deploying models that are small enough but fast enough is critical to make sure that we actually win in the end.
So I come back to, you mentioned decision loops. The OODA loop for Moscow is very short. Putin can decide and do. In the couple of minutes we have left, what would you advise the EU officials in this room to do to use AI to protect themselves from a potential Russian attack? What would you have them deploy first? Would it be critical infrastructure?
So my first recommendation would be to work with European companies.
Work with European
companies. This is a technology that Europe needs to own. If we don't own it, we will become an AI colony, and we will not have any geopolitical power anymore. I think the cost of inaction, I heard that term a few minutes ago, is extremely high in AI. So we need to realize that if we don't invest in European technology today, we will need to use technology from other parts of the world that are not necessarily aligned with our goals and with our freedom desire.
And it might be a contaminated supply chain.
Yes. What do you mean by that?
I mean, things might be embedded in certain supplies that you might use in your infrastructure that can be hacked later.
It is impossible to have a fully sovereign supply chain. What matters is to have a very strong sourcing of it and know exactly where things come from. And what matters is to have the switch buttons. What we don't want to have is a technology that the US can decide to cut off because they can kill it because it runs on the US cloud, for instance. So this is super important. We invest, it's very important that we continue to invest in defense in Europe, and it's great to see that this is happening. I think it's a great way to promote the European ecosystem and to build better resiliency. So I would say the message I would want to put out there is that it is absolutely necessary that the defense spend in artificial intelligence in Europe is directed toward European companies. That's the first thing I would want to say. And then there is two parts in which to invest, maybe three. One is deploying on the edge on command on drones, because that's probably the most impactful today. Cybersecurity is another one of them, which means using coding agents that are deployed in a way that is resilient and sovereign. And then
start designing it now.
And start designing it now, because the threat is already today. And then the third thing is really intelligence, because the threat comes from multiple places. Hybrid warfare is really something that we see developing. We need to embed AI systems into intelligence agencies much more than what we do today.
Dr. Mensch, thank you very much.
Thank you.